Acting here, look. Any initiative that alleviates the period poverty is to be applauded. Menstruation is an absolute necessity to the very existence of our species, and yet we hesitate in speaking about it. Ridiculously, an advertisement that spoke directly and usefully about how to use a tampon was complained about and discontinued. Too shocking and too blunt for our moral sensitivities. It speaks of a huge need for education and normalising of the subject and of this most normal of bodily functions. I was very fortunate to have a very progressive mother who sat me down at 10 to give me all of the facts of life in a natural and fabulously normal way. When periods came, they were supported and cherished, but that isn't the case for everyone. Of girls, women, trans and non-binary persons who menstruate, many experience period poverty in the management of their periods. This is totally unacceptable and it has to stop. I am very grateful to those who have gone before me in lighting the way to this matter, to Plan International for their considerable work, to Homeless Period Ireland for their tireless work, to the councils, including Senator Moynihan as councillor, who took the decision to supply period products over the past number of years. I'm not news to this subject either. I have been active for a considerable amount of time and have worked quietly with others in my close circle of friends in the funding of provision of period products. I think it's really awful to experience the pain and discomfort of menstruation without being able to deal with it in a manner that is respectful, without shame or embarrassment. I have often wondered what the world would be like if men had periods. Would force majeure leave include the reason of menstruation? Would pain relief be included with period products in the pack? And would period products be open and freely available? Would menstruation still have its obligatory forbearance, shame and embarrassment? I suspect not. Instead, we live in a world where the vast majority of those who menstruate are women, women who are more likely to be in the lower income groups, more likely to be the head of lone parent families, living in precarious tenure and precarious employment. Consequently, they are more likely to experience period poverty. Over the past years, in preparation for the forthcoming debates, over the past few days, in preparation for the forthcoming debates of legislation, I conducted an online survey. Of the replies to that, 1% didn't believe that it existed, 20% never experienced it, and of those who did, 25% do not use formal period products, and one person elaborated to tell me the choices that she is obliged to make between feeding and other necessary costs, as well as over the choice of period products. In making provisions for period products, we need to be very careful about any assumptions we make based on the projection of our own choices. We now have a society that is multicultural and multi-faith. Cultural differences means that the sales of period products are changing, tipping back in favour of sanitary pads from tampons. Those who are conscious of our environmental impact of period products advocate for the use of the menstrual cup, a silicone cup that is inserted to collect menstrual fluid and can be reused safely and hygienically. So the products made available must respect that diversity of choice. So also the entities and organisations chose to provide those products must not influence that choice. And we must enshrine that choice to those who menstruate themselves. The placement of the product must respect the diversity of users, including trans and non-binary menstruation. So placing them in a women's toilet will not be sufficient. Equally, care must be given to ensure the accessibility of all products. If we are to distribute period products through schools, we need to include primary schools so that those menstruating from as young and as early as 7 and 8, as reported, are also included. What happens when schools are closed for holidays and, like now during COVID, for instance? How are the products being accessed? Should we be including the provision of period products as part of our medical card entitlement? I welcome the report published today. The report calls for a comprehensive addressing of the issue of stigma and the ways in which that might be achieved. It suggests the pathway to provision via established networks and NGOs and makes sensitive suggestions around that provision. It further suggests solutions on the subject of VAT, and that needs to be addressed at an EU level. And in that regard, I have already contacted our MEPs, Maria Walsh and Frances Fitzgerald, and sought their support in lobbying for Member State discretion in the VAT Equalisation Directive. The report lastly addresses the fact that funding is required to support any initiative in this area. I believe that it is a comprehensive report which provides a pathway for consideration of all of the necessary steps to true period poverty alleviation. Therefore, I urge that we take on board all that it urges us to do and all that it seeks us to find out before we move to the next stage of legislation, so that we make sure that we have a gold standard of provision that reflects the careful inclusion and consideration that is required. I fear that if we rush, that we'll end up with what is merely a nod to provision and tokenism instead of a truly transformative, empowering end to period poverty. We need to have absolute ambition in this and be dedicated in that ambition. I therefore hope, Minister, that a significant amount of time will happen, and when I say that I only mean a matter of weeks and at most a couple of months, that will be had between the second and committee stages so that we can ensure a gold standard and end period poverty. Thank you.